San Francisco 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy threw 4 interceptions today, which you probably have likely already seen and will be the main topic of 49ers practice today. But there's a lot of other stuff that went down. And of course, as always, we're going to bring you the context behind those interceptions. And it's not as bad as it may sound as you hear fans in the background trying to get autographs from players. Let's start with kind of the return of some players. Jake Brendel returned to practice today. It was another padded practice. Dominic Pooney continued to start at right guard. That guy we got to watch out for because he is playing extremely well. But before we get into a deep dive on Pooney, let's talk about Kittle being back, Christian McCaffrey being back. You had Nick Bosa back in practice today. So it was much more representative of what we've come to know from this team. So obviously yesterday we had about 7-8 starters down on offense, some defensive players down. So the vibes at practice today were a lot higher and more competitive in nature. We got one-on-ones today, so that was good. We got to see a bunch of different things in that regard. In one-on-ones, Jalen Moore with a surprise performance was able to lock up Bosa on one rep that I saw. Came back, locked up Leonard Floyd on another. Pretty surprised with that. Aaron Banks struggled today. That's something that I think we need to monitor. Definitely struggled in one-on-ones and in team period. So him versus Hargrave was a battle that we kept watching, and it looked like Hargrave had won the majority of those particular battles. There's a lot of rotation at center. We saw Nick Sikel with the starters. We saw Ben Barch with the starters. There was a little bit of a fumble of the snap. I think it was Barch to Dobbs. So we saw that happen. Then on top of that, you had Dominic Pooney just lock down the starting right guard spot. He had one of my favorite reps of practice. You could see, you would be alerted to Fred Warner getting ready to blitz the A gap. He's able to step inside. He's able to take Fred Warner and pass him off to the center. And there's a looping defensive lineman. So as he's passing off Fred, he is able to pick up the looper. And at one point, he was blocking 2 people at once. And I think that play was pretty representative of Dominic Pooney up until this point. Dominic Pooney damn near dominated. I mean, I don't want to overhype it because, you know, we don't have the tape and, you know, it can get really granular with the offensive line. But so far from what we've seen of Dominic Pooney has been pretty solid. So the early returns and the fact that there's no Feliciano and there's no Burford and Pooney is getting all the reps, this is a developing story. This guy might work his way into the starting lineup if he keeps playing like this. So that is something that we will continue to watch. Even McKivitz had some good reps today. Much better performance by the offensive line, getting some guys back and just, again, getting their feet under them and feeling much better with the whole group. Much better performance by the 49ers offensive line, again, but also on the defensive side. Leonard Floyd would have had a sack on a particular play. Let me get my notes here so I can make sure we're getting you all the info correctly. But you had some pretty solid plays on the day. Let's talk about the interceptions from Brock Purdy, because obviously that is going to be the main focus of these 49ers training camp reports. And so let's get into them. Let me get my notes up here right in front. Actually, before we get into Brock Purdy's throwing the interceptions, let's talk about how good Brock was throwing today. Brock Purdy hit a dime. I'm talking about dime. So much of a dime, the second it left his hands, I had my buddy Jordan sitting next to me. I'm like, there it is. And you can see the ball traveling through the air, probably about 40, 45 air yards, maybe even more, and just hits Deebo Samuel in stride in the perfect spot. Didn't have to even reach for the ball. And Deebo's running up the left sideline, goes in for a touchdown. I mean, it's one of the best throws I've seen Brock Purdy make on this practice field. That includes his rookie year, last year, and this year. It was a phenomenal throw. And then Brock Purdy comes back with another beautiful floater, probably about 30, 35 yards down the left sideline. He had to kind of hold it a little bit. I didn't look like like, I don't know if CMC was the primary on this one, but CMC is kind of fading towards the numbers up the left. And Brock, again, just a floater in stride and just right on CMC. And it was a beautiful catch. It would have been a nice gain. And, I mean, Brock was really cooking in the first team period. And the 49ers looked much improved. Eli Mitchell, I think, had a really good practice today. He was running the ball well, especially with what has been made about Jordan Mason getting reps over him. He got the first carry of the day, from my understanding. So, I mean, Brock looked really, really good early on. But what had happened is the competition started to heat up. You had Fred Warner jump a pass, try to get a pick. But it was a solid PBU on a pass intended for Connolly. And then you had a would-be coverage sack, is what I'm designating it as, on Leonard Floyd. Brock Purdy let it go, and Jair Brown snagged it. It was kind of behind the wide receiver again. I would have clocked it as a dead play if we were talking live bullets. But it's what they do. It's what they're coached to do. They're coached to keep the play alive and give the guys a chance. But then Purdy followed up with a interception to meet Demetrius Flanagan fouls. This one was more of just kind of looked like he didn't see the underneath defender. So that's one. It was a very untypical Brock Purdy pick, because Brock is typically pretty solid in the middle of the field. And then you had the third Brock Purdy interception was it was a situation where he had to kind of hold it a little bit longer than he wanted to, but he still let it go, and it hit Jawan Jennings right in the hands, probably about 25 yards down the left sideline. And this is a ball that I'm talking about, perfect ball placement. It hits Jennings in the hands. You expect Jennings to come down with it, and it literally just popped out of his hands into, I think, George Odom lap as an interception. So I'm not going to say that one's on Brock. I think he made a good play, and also on top of that, he had Fred Warner literally probably 3 inches from his face. So it was a quality throw. Like, you talk about all the different elements. Fred Warner in his face, against the left sideline, pretty deep downfield, and he put it right on the money. It was just a drop that turned into a pick. And then the next one that he had was an interception to Diamador Lenore. That was a pick six. Again, that one just felt like it was behind on looked like a short out in the flat, and it was just behind, and Demo snagged it and went yards. So I would say 2 were on Brock, 2 were on other circumstances. So that's the context behind the interceptions. And honestly, I just tweeted about this. I mean, we're talking with some other guys out here as well. Like, this is a good practice. Like, this is what you want to see. This is a competitive environment. And I know people want to focus on interceptions and mistakes and the sky is falling, but in a situation where you have stars all over the field, guys are going to make plays. That's just how it's going to be. This isn't representative of a game environment. It's practice. And this was a good practice. Like, you're talking about energy. You're talking about guys flying around making plays. There's so many other things that happened in one-on-ones we could talk about. I'll talk about later on live. But overall, everything that we saw, this is a good practice. This is the type of practice where you leave and you like, that. This is good work, boys. Might not have been perfect, might not have been the best, but it was quality work from everyone. We got a Ricky Pearsall catch. Let's go. So the boys are heating up. Like what I saw, but you already know what to do. Make sure to like and subscribe for more updates.